we've got Alicia Vikander on the way. We're going to be talking about her new TV show, but there are some movies to go and see. What are you going to talk about first?
The Harder They Come is 50 years old, which is
really.
I know, it's absolutely terrifying, isn't it? 1972, and it's being reissued. It's got a long play at the BFI South Bank, and it's being reissued in cinemas. I take it you've seen The Harder They Come?
A long time ago.
Okay. For those who haven't, kind of hailed as a first Jamaican feature film, not first feature film to be shot with scenes in Jamaica, but first Jamaican feature film. Low budget drama directed by Perry Hensel, starring Jimmy Cliff as Ivan. If you're a Clash fan, you see he feels like Ivan born under the Brixton sun. His game is called Surviving at the end of The Harder They Come. Inspired by the sort of real-life 40s Jamaican outlaw Reggae, figure of modern myth whose name apparently meant wild or raging. He wasn't a musician, but kind of, outlaw folk hero. And the story is about somebody attempting to make it in the business and coming up against all these different obstacles and, gangsterism to some extent and, intrigue and loads of music. And hailed as being the first genuinely authentic portrayal of that milieu. Also, one of the very few films, there's an awful lot of pop movies, but very few pop movies can be genuinely credited with popularising a musical form internationally. And it has been generally regarded by, I think it was both Rolling Stone and Time magazine, said that the soundtrack to Harder They Come was one of the greatest albums of all time and was responsible for widening the appeal of reggae on the international stage. If you haven't seen any of it, Harder They Come has a brilliantly kind of gritty, raw, earthy feel. Sometimes it feels like a documentary, although obviously it is a drama. Here is a clip from the 1972, wow, I can't believe it's 50 years old, The Harder They Come.
Singing in the background.
And also, if you can't get to see it in a cinema, it is available on BFI Player. It's the remarkable thing about Harder They Come. So, fairly low budget, sort of made on the fly, became a huge hit in Jamaica, partly because I think it was the first time that the audience had seen their world portrayed convincingly on screen. Then, opened over here. It had a residency in a cinema in Brixton for many, many weeks and became a big cult hit. Everybody bought the soundtrack album. In America, Roger Corman picked it up, and it became one of the kind of the cult midnight movie texts. So along with things like Eraserhead, Pink Flamingos, El Topo, Harder They Come was one of those movies that would play the midnight circuit. Weirdly, in America, they decided to subtitle it because the Americans just had no idea what was being said. And I think the really fascinating thing about it is, firstly, I've watched it again fairly recently. I did an introduction for it for the BFI about maybe a year ago, something, and I watched it again then, and then because it was about to be reissued, I watched it again. It is amazing how well it holds up. It is amazing just how great the soundtrack is, but not just that, just how authentic, the portrait of those lives feel. It's, as I said, one of the few pop movies that's ahead of the curve. It's not a kind of retro pop movie that's capturing something that's gone. It is genuinely introducing, music to a whole new audience. If you speak to people like, Don Letts or, anyone that you think of as being musically influenced, they all had their own stories of the first time they saw The Harder They Come. So if you've never seen it, definitely watch it. If you have seen it, but you've never seen it on a big screen, go and see it on the big screen because it is an absolute stone cold classic, and it has really stood the test of time, and it's great to see it back on the big screen.
And Boney M did everyone a favour by singing Rivers of Babylon, because then, even though that was just playing in the background, you're thinking, because in the same way that a lot of people won't have seen How Do They Come, a lot of people won't have heard the original versions of these songs. Yeah. So
I've got, I don't know whether you have the same thing, but on your phone, if you've got your Spotify account, whatever it is, you've got some albums that you've saved on your phone. You can listen when you're offline. So the first thing I ever saved to my phone was the Harder They Come soundtrack, because you can just play it over and over and over again. But there is much more to the film than just the soundtrack. Oh, wow, you've made it to the end.
Congratulations.
Now you're here, you may want to hear about some of our other offerings.
Other offerings?
Yeah,
I know what.
The other offerings, the exclusive interviews we do on our hit subscription podcast, Kermode and Mayo's Extra Takes.
Oh, yeah, that.
Yeah, that.
The one where we speak to the likes of Tom Hanks and Daisy Edgar Jones, and the extra subscription content where Rowan Atkinson told us all about that famous rapping scene in Love Actually.
Yes, that's the one.
Amazing. And where would our lovely YouTube subscribers find this mystical creation?
Well, I'm glad you asked. They just need to go to kermodeandmayo.com or tap the link in the description.
That easy, eh?
That easy.
Incredible.